We are very glad that you joined us today again in another episode of our series entitled The Law of Karma, Destiny and Choice. Today we will be looking at a somewhat serious topic entitled Moving Beyond Tragedy. There are many of you who have experienced tragedy in your personal lives, in your professional lives. Something bad could have happened to somebody you love, a colleague at work, and so today we will be asking a senior yogi how she can share with us tools in dealing with both personal and professional tragedies. So Sister Denise, hello.
Hello, Magla.
It's good to have you back in the studio with us.
Thank you.
Dealing with tragedy. It's something that unfortunately most of us have to face in our lives at one point or another. When tragedy befalls one, what is the best way of dealing with it?
Tragedy befalls when you really, really don't want it to. Close people meet with accidents, die, suicide, sudden powerful illness carries them away. It happens. In the practice of Raj Yoga, we will turn our attention to the point of destiny. And also we use this expression drama. And we use it in connection with the idea that we're in a gigantic theatre. Shakespeare had said, all the world's a stage and we are actors on it, which is a very true way to look at it, but we forget it all the time. And when tragedy strikes, the reaction is, no, it should not be. And then another one is, why did this happen?
To me.
Why did it happen? Why did it happen to me? But we don't accept it. And ultimately we have to go through this rejection of the reality, this bargaining with, it shouldn't have happened. Can I do something to, turn back the clock and make it go a different way? But you can never turn the clock back. And it is said in the Raj Yoga practice that it is a repeating drama. History repeats, we know that expression. And when a tragic event happens, we learn it is destined. It had to happen like that. It's about bringing ourselves as realistically, quickly as possible to this situation of acceptance. And it's very difficult for people to accept something that's unacceptable. But yet this is what we have to do. And so you have to move through the process of grieving, the bereavement process for a loved one who is tragically taken away. And I think a yogi learns about this so often and so much in the study that you anticipate that something like this unexpected is going to happen sooner or later, and you kind of brace for it and prepare for it and try to make sure that your happiness is not dependent on things always being the way they are, because at any time anything can change or not be there suddenly. And this is very helpful because when tragedy does strike, you're actually already halfway through, at least halfway through the process of acceptance. You apply this practice of becoming a little neutral between the good and the bad. In the Bhagavad Gita it also says you need to develop an attitude of equanimity in the face of the pairs of opposites, the good and the bad, the tragic and the euphoric, all of these things. Attachment is the difficulty.
I would say yes.
I mentioned earlier about being absolutely loving and totally detached. And this is something that I practice personally with all of the significant people in my life, because you can shift this attachment, dependency, whose ultimate result is sorrow, to this balance of absolute love and total detachment, which means you're relating to people. Always try and be in the present. Always try to do the very best between yourself and that person, because you never know any time is the last time you see someone.
In the course of life, when something really difficult hits you, really, really difficult, death, loss of limb, divorce, loss of job, death of a child, these things, you don't just look at the situation and feel a sense of horror that's unfolding. One starts to think there's something wrong with me. It crushes one's sense of self-worth. It totally brings you down. So apart from having to deal with the situation, to make practical arrangements to now create a new normal for your life without this loved one in your life, without the job, without ... You now have to deal with a shell of yourself. Where does one go to from there? And how do you recover from the feeling that, why does God hate me?
Your identity is in terms of your relationships. I am the mother of, brother of, sister of, father of, child of, friend of, etc. We have this word mine. Anything that is mine is an extension of me. And so if something that's an extension of me gets cut off, then some bit of me is cut off. In spiritual practice, you always, again and again and again, are saying, there is a drama, I have a role here, I'm playing a role. The only connection that is perpetual is the connection between yourself and God, or between yourself and yourself. But everyone else is coming and going. Every relationship is for a while. Everything in this world is temporary, and there's always a start date and an end date.
Your last sentence is obvious. Why do we run away or choose not to see the obvious?
I don't know, selective perception, something like this. Because of attachment, we say, oh, I will love you forever. I will love you till the end of time. You will be mine until death, and we won't die. The finality of this cut, people cannot bear it, because this attachment produces the experience of sorrow. So if you don't want to have sorrow, then you have to relate in a way that is non-attached. And when I tell you about absolute love and total detachment, it's a very real thing, and it's a very practical thing, because you are then able to let go much more easily and much more quickly. Because you see, the person always is the person, and I am me. And it's not that two people together become one person. Two people together are always two, and there's an interaction. You want to make sure that that interaction is the best possible for the duration of it being there, but always keep in the back of the mind that one day this will finish. And what karmically I must do is to make sure that as long as I'm in this relationship with this person, my karma with this person is positive, good, accurate, and that even if this person doesn't behave well with me, I can still behave well with them. I think I mentioned a little earlier about in your relationship with God, God never gets it wrong. You may get it wrong. but God is very stable, steady, always there, always reciprocal, and you learn through this relationship to have a similar relationship with people, places, and things which are all temporary. I think the essential message of God to humanity is everything is temporary.
I would like to manufacture a bumper sticker with those words on.
Everything
I
is
think
temporary.
I'll make a pretty penny. Yes, yes. It's a truth that we all run from. We run from it. We do not want to know that the person that I love the most in the world is going to die. We don't want to know that one day our children are going to leave home. We don't want to know that one day I have to retire. We don't want to know this.
Well, this is denial.
Yeah, and we become adept at it.
We do.
I asked you this question about a year ago in a different context, but I want to repeat the question within this episode. Once tragedy has befallen you, can you come back from it? Can a human being come back from anything or not?
I think that a big tragedy, a big trauma will scar you. And that scar will be there forever. But you can carry your scars with nobility and with depth and with acceptance. This is part of your greatness.
That sounds lovely in theory, but how do I accept?
Something will scar you, and definitely it damages you in some way, but you know, your scars are an indicator you've been through stuff. Having been through stuff adds to you, doesn't subtract from you, you see.
Pause. Respect. That's big, and not many people know that because it feels the opposite of what you just said. When a loved one dies, when you get fired, you feel that something's been taken away from you. You feel that something or someone has been taken from you. And now you are saying that that's not the case.
It adds to your greatness because you have to endure it. You have to get through it. This is a great trial. And when you get through big trials, you become more than what you were before.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. Why are we so reluctant to grow? Why do we want to remain small?
Oh, well, I think it's because childhood is very pleasant and adulthood, you know, to in the words of the French singer, I think is Jacques Brel, he said, you have to be very smart to grow old without growing up. And this is for the romantic people.
Smart man that. Smart man indeed. You have to say that again?
You have to be pretty clever to grow old without growing up. It's ironic.
In other words, keep your inner child alive.
No, in other words, get on with growing up and don't remain childish.
Right, okay.
Life is about going through the stages of childhood, teenage, maturity, old age, you know, so that you can live your last days with dignity and grace, you know, because life is not just a little slice of it where you're tall, thin, tan, blonde, beautiful, and 25. That lasts for 1 year, but your life is a lot longer. You know? We need to mature, we need to develop, we need to become what we were intended to become, and we go through a peak and then we decline. This is the nature of life, and when tragedy strikes, it makes you great, but it also indicates that also you will also die, you will also decline, and you will also leave, and life is like that. So the key in terms of balance of these three things, of choosing and knowing about karma and destiny, any tragedy is destined. And so there's nothing you can do to say, oh, I could have done this and avoided it. Nothing you can do. So the problem that you raised a little bit earlier is people think that, you know, something is taken away from them, or they feel responsible. I am responsible because this person died, or this child died, or what could I have done to avoid it? Nothing you can do, because it's destiny. From a karma point of view, you do your best, but you cannot control destiny. You have to work with it.
I'm thinking of the feelings that we become burdened with when all hell breaks loose, and specifically the feelings of guilt and shame and regret. Three of our personal dark favorites. We get stuck there. And what you just alluded to, I feel responsible. When a parent, a good parent, loses a child by way of accident, for example, even though there's nothing that the parent could have done to prevent the child from being killed in an accident, the parent feels a lifelong responsibility of, if only I ... How does one recover from those emotional prisons? Because that is what tragedy does to you. It kind of locks you in a horror of sorrow.
Yes, it does.
A horror movie of sorts.
There's certain little phrases that were given to me as time went by. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. You have to get to that point. It is happening, it's not happening to me. Just it is happening. Because you have to develop this positioning of a detached observer. Even if you could have prevented something, you didn't. These are phrases, devices, mantras you can say that put a stop to that endless thinking of I should have, I could have, this or that. You didn't. Okay, let it be. You have to again and again and again repeat it. Every time it starts up, you say, I didn't. That's what happened. Let it be. It is. It is what it is. And then move on. Because it pulls you back into the past, which you can do nothing about. So it is destined. It happened. Nothing I can do. And move on. You just have to know, and again there'll be situations that arise which will fortify this lesson, that there's nothing you can do about a war, nothing you can do about a failed harvest. When something goes terribly wrong, it requires a great deal of you, very often more than you can, to manage it. You have to do your best and let that be enough. You release the tension that is otherwise held on to by not letting go of these things. There is nothing you can do. You just have to stop, let go, and just leave it to God.
Do your best and let that be enough. Another bumper sticker I would like to create. Yes, I'm acquiring a collection in the series. In an earlier episode, you mentioned the convergence of psychological healing as well as spiritual education. To come out of a tragedy psychologically healthy, one needs assistance, does one not?
Generally speaking, yes. Either you have your therapist, or you have friends, or you have a religious authority who will help you through it. This is very, very helpful. It's quite difficult to do it alone. It's possible, but quite difficult.
I'm thinking of individuals who, after they have had something bad happen to them, they punish themselves for the rest of their lives. This can take the form of, well, emotional or mental flagellation, sometimes even physical. Why is that, and what can one do to bring yourself out of it?
To me, a person will do that under the influence of a a religious teaching that advocates that.
Mea culpa.
Yes, mea massima culpa. And this is why I think the spiritual knowledge that we have here is so much more healthy, because you know what you're responsible for, you know what you're not responsible for. And you be honest and open and real, and it is destiny, nothing you can do. If you did make a big mistake, what can you do? Whatever you can do to make amends, to apologize, to admit, whatever, but you can't put the clock back. And if you are given some punishment for it, like if you got into a situation where maybe it wasn't your fault, but you got done for manslaughter or something like this, you have to take the punishment and use it to your personal advantage. Because sometimes you get wrongfully imprisoned. I had one person who was wrongfully imprisoned. It was the only person I met who benefited from being in prison, because he decided to really clean up his act and do some work on himself.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, wow. Many turn to God when they're down and out. How does the divine assist in raising one up?
When there's, everything else fails, and from the depth of your being you turn to God, God will give an incredible assistance, relief, feeling of being there. But that is only real when a person has God in their lives anyway.
The world is full of people who have not engaged with God at all until tragedy struck. What of them?
They may not have engaged, but God is always there in the back of the mind. When tragedy strikes, you go right there. A person who doesn't have anything to do with God and then turn to God when tragedy strikes, you will definitely receive some assistance. You might, as a result of that feeling of connectedness, you might start to develop a daily relationship with God. But there are many who just have God with them all the time, and then when tragedy strikes, is right there, You get a situation where a person just can't do anything else except turn to God, because nothing works. This may awaken a lost connectedness, and in that sense, that tragedy becomes an instrument for their spiritual awakening and development, and that tragedy becomes something good in that sense. But sometimes a tragedy, a person will blame God, and they will say, you did this, and they will hate God. That happens.
Yeah, looking for someone or something to blame for what happened to you. Yeah. And is God responsible for our tragedies?
Our tragedies are partly karma, partly destiny. If it's karma, that tragedy will be a way for us to settle that debt. If it's destiny, that tragedy will be a springboard to carry us to a higher place. And you can evaluate it according to your instincts, your intuition. But God per se is a detached observer, seeing everything, giving love, but not interfering with anybody's life.
On that high note, we say goodbye to you and our audience. There you go, moving on from tragedy. I think that every single one of us has asked ourselves this question at some point in our lives. This is so great, this is so bad, can I move on from this? And Sister Denise has shared some wonderful tools in how to come back and move on from a tragedy that has befallen you. I do hope that you can move on in your life as well. Take care, and thank you for joining us. Goodbye, Sister Denise, and goodbye to you.